This is Launching Your Daughter podcast, and I'm your host, Nicole Burgess, licensed marriage and family therapist. The information shared in this podcast is not a substitute for seeking help from a licensed mental health professional. Now, here is today's episode. Episode 30. Welcome, everybody. My guest today is Jessica Paist, who has her degree in marriage and family therapy, and she's located in Jenkintown, Pennsylvania. Jessica is a teen therapist who specializes in empowering tween and teen girls, and I'm so excited to have her on today and talk about the work that she does. So welcome, Jessica.
Thank you so much for having me, Nicole. I'm so excited.
I am too, because you and I really love working with teen girls and their parents, and I would love for you to tell a little more about what type of work that you do, because this isn't something I've talked about on the podcast yet, and I would love to kind of educate the parents a little more about what it is that you do.
Great. I'd love to share that. So, like you said, I do specialize in supporting teens and their parents, and I really have a passion for empowering tween and teen girls. So that might look like individual work with the teens, and generally, because my background is in marriage and family therapy, when I do take on individual clients, so often it is supporting the parents as well. So I do the family piece as well. And then in addition, I started running groups for teen girls. Having so many teen girl clients come into my office individually, and them talking about a lot of the same struggles and feeling that they're the only ones who are experiencing what they're experiencing, I kind of had this idea that, man, if only they knew that they're not the only one. So I started running these groups for tween and teen girls, and I love them. And they've just been so great to see the connection and what can take place in that group versus the individual work.
You and I both come from a very similar kind of training background regarding the marriage and family therapy. And what you're talking about, is that systems work, that when you work with adolescents or even children, that you do need to involve the parents because it's part of the whole collective, part of the system. So I love how you can do that individually, you can do that with the families, and now it's really, you're taking it to a larger level where it's doing the group work with the teens and having them gain an understanding that you hit it right on the head, is that they're not alone in this. So tell our audience a little more about why are groups beneficial to teen girls or tween girls?
The groups they've been so great. And, like we just said, a huge piece of that is just them knowing that they're not alone. It's sitting in my office across from all of these individual clients and them saying, why am I the only one who feels this way? Or, none of my friends are experiencing this. And I'm thinking, well, if only you knew how many girls sit in that spot and say the same thing. Mm-hmm. So, these girls really get an opportunity to come together in a room, to start talking about some of the stuff that's going on. And then all of a sudden they're thinking, oh my gosh, I'm not the only one. And something so magical happens when they just realize it's not just me. There's not something wrong with just me. There's not something wrong with any of us. And really getting an opportunity to normalize that. At the end of all of my groups, we do a top takeaway. So what's one thing that you remember that stood out for you from our group? And so often, like in the first few sessions, overwhelmingly the top takeaways from the girls are, I can't believe I'm not alone. It feels so good to know that I'm not the only one. I feel like just that piece of it, not even getting into the skills that they learn in group or any of the activities that we do, it's just that one piece that almost is like such a relief for them that it's not just me. I feel like that's one of the biggest and most one of the most magical things about group, especially for this population, is that it's not just me. I'm not alone. And let me be in this room with other girls who are very much like me. And it gives them just a new environment to learn all of the stuff that we're talking about.
Yeah, and you've hit it too, that this age group, there are so many changes going on, right? Not only with pulling away a little more from parents, trying to fit in a little more with their peers, wanting to, really stand out with their autonomy. And at the same time, there's so much going on within the brain and how it is changing. So when they go, oh, okay, there are other kids my age, other girls my
Mm-hmm.
age that are maybe struggling in certain areas or maybe facing some of these same challenges. It's like, oh, okay. So then it's not as difficult when they're in a school setting or an extracurricular activity that they know it's like, okay, I know there's got to be somebody else here that is probably going through the same thing. And I don't have to feel quite so isolated or that my parents won't understand or my friends won't understand.
Right.
So I love that. That is
And, a
awesome.
big piece of that is the judgment that we have on ourselves. And if, I'm working with these girls and they feel that they're the only one, they usually have some pretty negative judgments about themselves. Like I said, that there's something wrong with them, that, it's just them. So once they realize that it's
Yeah.
not just them, it almost takes away that piece of judgment that it's not them, and it's not that there's something wrong with them. And like I said, just normalizing those feelings for all of them, because it's kind of across the board with teen girls. I found, at least, that it's a hard time to be a teenager.
Yes.
Those like middle school and high
Yeah.
school years are really tough.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I know, I've talked with parents, and I'm sure you do as well, that the teenagers, what they face now is vastly different from our generation, from the generation before. Things are constantly changing and the pressures are different. The social media is different. So when their daughters can take away that judgment of themselves, helps take that stress level down and feeling like, yeah, I'm not broken, because you've hit it. They're not broken.
No.
It's like these are just some things that are struggling during this developmental stage.
Right.
And here's some things that, you can do about it, and know that you're not alone in this as well.
Right.
I love that. Could you share a little bit about what are some of the skills, or what are some of the, I guess, the teachings that you do in the different groups that you run with the tweens and the teens?
Sure. So for the tween girls, right before they're getting into those teenage years, those are a little bit more preventative in nature. So I think we had talked before about the statistic that self-esteem in girls peaks at age 9. So, my thought behind running groups for younger girls was more prevention. How do we keep the girls with that increased self-esteem so that it doesn't plummet when they get to adolescence? So some of the skills that we do in there are just like really focused on self-esteem building and finding your strengths. Lots of art, lots of activities to continue working on that. So before they're starting to not feel so great about themselves, what are the things that make them really wonderful people? I try to tie in like lots of video clips, anything that I can find that's applicable for them. So that's kind of the younger teen piece. For my older teens, it really depends on what they're presenting with. A lot of times I found that they have a lot of anxiety, that they are maybe struggling with some depression. And then again, of course, the self-esteem part of it and the confidence. So I try to keep my groups pretty open to whatever they might need on a week-to-week basis. So, in the beginning of group, we start out with an attitude of gratitude. What's one thing that you feel grateful for this week? And just talking about the research in terms of how feeling gratitude and expressing gratitude increases happiness. So
Yep.
we start off with that kind of on a positive note. And then I give the girls an opportunity to talk about if there's something going on in their week, in their day, something that they need support with. So sometimes we might do something with managing anxiety. So what are some skills? I have a big background in mindfulness. So I use a lot of mindfulness activities with all of my groups, actually. So it's, utilizing better coping skills. It's trying to boost those feelings of happiness when you're not feeling so happy. And then similar to my younger girls group is the piece of self-esteem building. So, pulling in lots of activities. For example, one of my favorite things to do is to have the girls give compliments to each other, because the girl,
Nice.
man, it's kind of sad to say it, but girls and women don't receive compliments well. Like,
Correct.
oh, don't
Correct.
tell me I'm a
Yeah.
good artist. They're shuddering at the fact that somebody has said something positive. So I really challenge the girls to have to make eye contact, to have to give a compliment, and then have to receive it. Thank you. I appreciate that you said that. And I feel like I'm a broken record in these groups sometimes, but my huge piece is that you just have to keep trying to fill yourself up. So whether it's you complimenting yourself, or before, if you're unable to do that, then other people complimenting you to fill it up for you. Just last week we did this. One of the girls was leaving and everybody went around the room to give her, something to take away with her. And actually one of the other girls in the group had said, can we do this every week? Can we take turns complimenting each other every single week? Whereas I usually just do it a few times a group session. And the girls were like, we love this. We just want to do it every week. And I thought, perfect. Every week now we'll implement something to that effect of giving each other positive feedback and compliments. And I loved that was actually their idea to do it every week.
And it's so important too. I mean, you've hit that for our society, for females, it is like, we're supposed to deflect compliments. We're not supposed to accept them. Somehow we're very tough, not only on ourselves, but with each other. And so to be able to learn that skill of just saying, it's okay if I allow myself to actually feel that compliment, that compassion that comes to me. And as you said, kind of filling up, I call it the love bucket. So filling that up. So it's like, I've got that in reserve. So if there's a bump in the road that day, it's like, okay, I can go back and remember that and feel that again and move forward. So I love that. And it's awesome that, the girls in your group are like, we really like this. So they're willing to continue to practice that great skill of being able to share that with one another. That is awesome.
Yeah, I do love that. And I feel like it's, you said it's almost like we're trained. I don't know if it's from society or where it really comes from, but we really struggle with saying, I'm really good at that. I know that I'm good at that, or I know that that's a strength of mine. And I challenge the girls sometimes in my groups and say, why is that? Why don't you feel that you can accept that compliment? And the feedback I always get is, I don't want to be cocky. I don't want to be arrogant. Yeah. And there's such a disconnect between, the girls don't understand that they can feel really good about themselves and be really confident in something that they do. And that does not have to mean that they're arrogant or cocky. It doesn't equal each other. And that's really such a disconnect with these teens, I feel like.
Yeah. And there's that education piece of what the difference is between the two and how you can come across self-confident and not, arrogant, where it's like, I know I'm the best and everybody else, can't do this as well as me. Versus, it's like, no, I'm really good in math, or I'm really good in coding, or I'm really good in, helping others out, or whatever it may be.
Right.
Yeah. I also liked, you talked about you work with the girls with the attitude of gratitude. And I think that's a great skill to also to help with the parents, right? Because when I'm teaching adults who struggle with kind of getting stuck in that negative cycle, that's a great family activity too, of being able to go around the dinner table and talk about what is working and, what you're grateful for regarding the family, or what you're grateful for today, and helps the whole system go back and really, look at what is working versus getting stuck in the negative. So I love that. Again, you're teaching it, being proactive in that younger age group, so they have that skill as they continue to go into a young adulthood. It's great.
Yeah, and that's something that we used to start our groups with, like their positive and their negative from their week. We used to call it a pearl and an onion. But I've even felt that, going towards their onion, like the negative for the week, was that we tended to then start off on a more negative foot for group. Yeah. So I changed it to let's just do something we're grateful for. And they have responded really well to it. And it just kind of sets the tone in a different way for the day of, for that group. Starting it off on something. And 2 weeks ago, I guess, I had showed them a video about, I found something on YouTube about just how gratitude increases happiness and the research that supports that. And, they were so amazed to see that the research actually backs it up. And then, we do it every week now, and it's really changed the way our groups start off, and I really love it. And I think that they do too.
Beautiful. I'm going to switch gears just a little bit and kind of talk about, again, when it goes to that negative piece of it, or the fears that may come up, of what are some of the things that you have heard in the past? Maybe it's from the tween or the teen girls about why they're like, oh no, group would not work for me. Or maybe even the parents, where there's a hesitation to do they want to do more individual work or family work versus group? What are some of those common themes that come up?
Well, a lot of times, one of the bigger questions I get from teens is, what if I know somebody in the group? What if somebody from my school's there? So that's something that is obviously really personal. Like, the group is supposed to be a really safe space. And if you join a group and you know somebody in it, maybe you don't feel safe to share or to learn. So I really do leave that up to the girls to decide. Obviously, can't tell them who's in the group until they
Right.
join, until they see when they get there. But I really do let it up to them. If they get to group and they find that somebody's there, we can talk about it. Is it something that we can work through or no? So that's one of the biggest concerns from the teen girls. But then I think on a different level, it's, maybe some of the stigma that, oh, well, I can't be in something like a group therapy. Like, there's nothing wrong with me that I need to be in a group environment type thing. Because I think that sometimes when we think of group work, it can feel like everybody's coming to this group because there's something wrong with them. And they don't really want to be kind of piled into that, I guess. So a lot of my work with those concerns is destigmatizing that this, there is nothing wrong with any of you. And in a lot of ways, I found the groups to be even a better way to work with teens on their self-esteem than the individual, because so much comes out of the group work and the activities that we do. So really presenting it in a way that this is just a space where we come once a week and we get a chance to talk. And a lot of times, if I can get a girl to try it for a week, a teen to try it, they stay, because it just feels better once they get there. So there's something sometimes scary, I think, about starting a group, and that they might be vulnerable, or what are people going to think of them, or are they going to be judged? Are they going to fit in? So, but then it kind of, that mimics real life so beautifully, like, am I going to fit in at school, and am I going to be judged? And I feel like the group gives them a really safe environment to practice that, so that they might feel a little bit more comfortable going out into their school setting or into their peer groups and feeling a little bit better about who they are, or just being in an atmosphere with other people.
Yeah, I mean, and I was sitting there, I was nodding my head that I was like, oh, it does mimic life, because you're teaching them to really lean in to those fears, acknowledge those fears, and continue to move forward versus letting the fears run them and take that confidence level away. It's like, hey, I'm going to try it. I'm going to see what happens. And when it's like, oh, okay, I'm not alone in this, and wow, this really is a safe place, that confidence goes up, and you've hit it. That's like, then they get to play that out in other areas of their life, not just in that group room. So I love that.
Yeah, and it gives them a place, because a lot of times they're not in a group with somebody they go to school with. That almost never happens. So they are building this little circle that has nothing to do with their outside life. So it really gives them this space to figure out who they are without the fear of, my friends at school are going to judge me, or they're going to think I'm weird, or, whatever that fear might be. It's just, they're all kind of in the same position. Nobody knows each other from school usually, and they all get to practice it together so that they can go back out to their peer groups and to their friends, and with with renewed sense of confidence, I guess.
That is awesome. That is, it is just beautiful work. I love it.
Thank you.
So I'm curious, how can parents or teens, how do they go about kind of finding that group that really can support them? What are some of the, I guess, kind of tips to begin to find that? Because I know you're in Pennsylvania, and if not everybody is in your area, how would you recommend parents or teenagers to be able to search for a teen group that it's fitting more for their needs or what they're needing?
That's a great question. And I'm obviously not familiar with other states. I know in Pennsylvania that there's actually not a whole lot of teen groups around here. So, that might be different in various states. I'm not sure. But my suggestion really would be to start looking online, using those keywords like teen groups or, girl empowerment groups, something like that. There's some like good websites where you would search for a therapist, like for example, Psychology Today. I have my groups listed on that because you can list groups there. So I do get a lot of calls just from Psychology Today that somebody typed in, that they were looking for a girls group and my group popped up. So I would just start looking around. I would maybe start calling, if you know of any therapists or if you found therapists in your area who do work with teen girls, that maybe they might run groups or know somebody who does. So for example, like in my community, I have really done a lot of outreach with my colleagues in the area who support similar clients. So we can kind of work back and forth, like whereas I might do a group, somebody might send their clients to my group just because we work well together and we understand the benefits of group. So the connections in your community can really be helpful in terms of helping you find the group that you're looking for.
Yeah, and that's a good point because every state is a little different, and they could also check with like the school counselors, because they may have some of those connections where they know they refer that out because they don't necessarily run the group in that school. So that'd be a good place. Even doctors' offices sometimes have that information because, as you're saying, you're connecting with your other professionals in your community. So there's a lot of different ways to kind of go about searching.
Right.
That.
And, what I've done is, speaking to schools and doctors' offices is sending that information to them so that they are just aware that it's out there. If somebody's looking for it, I try to make sure that that information is kind of in all the right hands, just in case somebody's, asking their pediatrician, and so that the doctor or the school or the guidance counselor will know that there's those resources available.
Yeah, absolutely. And one question that was coming up to my head that I'd like to cover if we could, for your groups, I'm guessing they're an open group or are they a closed group? And could you define for our listeners what the difference is between those two types of groups?
Sure. So my groups are open, meaning that there's no set number of sessions. When I was starting the group, I went back and forth, do I have a closed group and say it's maybe 6 or 8 sessions, or do I keep it open? And I really, I went with having open groups because I wanted it to be a continuous resource throughout the year. I didn't want girls to feel like, oh, darn, I missed the first 2 weeks and now I can't do it again until the next round. I really wanted it to just be as it's needed or as it's desired that they could sign up for it. Now, I obviously don't go above a certain number. I like to keep my groups like around 7 or 8 girls, just because when it gets too big, I think that not everybody gets a chance to have the room to grow or to learn. But I do keep them open, and then as the need comes, I can start another group if I want to. But it's been really good. It's been one of my concerns actually with having an open group was, what if somebody joins a few weeks after everybody else, and will the relationship still be the same? And, just kind of, I didn't want anybody to join late and then feel that they were an outsider. And I haven't had that problem yet. I really, if I have somebody join after most people have joined, we just do lots of joining activities, lots of team building activities in the first 1 or 2 sessions that they're joined. And then it's like, they've been there the whole time. I've never had an issue with somebody joining at a different time than other people. And we just kind of pick up where we left off because every week might be different depending on what the girls are bringing in. We just kind of keep going. And the feedback that I've gotten from a lot of professionals in the area and families even has been, I'm so thankful that this is an open group and that she can do this all year if she wants to, or that, it's not like there's a deadline to sign up for something.
Yeah, that's great. That's good. Love it. Love it. So I'm curious, is there a book or a piece of advice that you typically give parents or to teens that to continue to help encourage and support them in that process of becoming more confident and empowered?
Yes. So I love reading books.
Me too.
I am Amazon is always delivering books to my door. So I have books that I recommend for this. For parents, so part of my group work is every week the parents get an email from me. So it goes over what we've talked about in groups, tips and tricks for parents to help their teens. Because again, my background being in that family work, I don't like to leave the parents out of what we're doing in group. So the 2 books that I really consistently recommend for parents are Untangled which is the first one. And then the second one is 9 Ways We're Screwing Up Our Girls. So both of those have such great information about how parents can change the way that they are parenting. And it's usually just really small changes, but they're enlightening. It's things that when I read them, I thought, oh man, I never even thought of that. And I have 3 kids and 2 of them are girls. So some of the stuff in those books, I'm thinking, wow, make note of this, change the way you're doing this with the girls. So those are the things that I recommend for parents. And then for the girls, for the younger girls, American Girl has a whole series of books that I recommend that are that address like changes in your body, changes in your emotions, how to feel good about yourself. So I usually recommend any of those books for my tween girls. And then for the older girls, there's lots of, workbook books that the girls can get. So one of them is called How to Like Yourself. The other one is called The Self-Esteem Workbook for Teens. So usually they're literally workbooks with activities and questions and things that the girls can go through to answer. But it's almost like, in between group sessions or individual sessions or whatever, the teen is involved in, it's stuff that they can do at home to continue that work.
Yeah. Yep. I love that. Those are really good resources. And I'll definitely have those on the show notes so that people can go out and find that information and get that as well. So that's great. So talking about finding the information, how can people find you, Jessica?
They can find me on my website. My website is www.jessicapaist.com. So it's my name. And, I have all of my groups listed on there, and I actually have resource pages on there for parents. So it's where I'm constantly updating, new books that I recommend. My blog usually has lots of tips and tricks, like I said, for parents on just various topics and how to support your teens and then specifically your teen girls. So it's all on my website.
Excellent. Well, thank you again for sharing your expertise in running teen groups and really, again, empowering them from the young age to the older age so that they become more confident women and they don't lose that confidence. As you said, from studies saying around 9 years old, it kind of peaks, and trying to keep that going. So I absolutely love it. And I appreciate you taking the time to be on the show today and sharing your knowledge.
And thanks so much for having me. I'm so passionate about this topic. So I was so excited to be able to talk about it with you.
I hope you liked today's episode, in which Jessica explains how group therapy can be very beneficial for both tween and teen girls, along with individual therapy, but that the group piece of it, they can feel like they're not alone in things, learn some skills to help keep them empowered as they go into young adulthood. So if you're looking for a group, go to some of the resources that Jessica mentioned, like Psychology Today, or talk to your local doctor, your school counselors. Do some research through the internet to try and find some local groups to get your daughter that support she may be needing and or you as the parent may be needing. I also want to remind you to go out to launchingyourdaughter.com and sign up for the newsletter. If you're local, meaning here in Indiana, I've got a group that I'm getting ready to start and some other group ideas for parents. So sign up for that newsletter so you can stay informed of when things are going to start, what I'm going to offer, and go from there. I would love to get some feedback from my parents of some of the areas they may be struggling with regarding their tween or teen daughter, so that I can maybe do a future episode on it or give some feedback for what it is that I'm hearing and what you all are wanting to learn more about. Thank you again for listening. Thank you for listening to Launching Your Daughter with Nicole Burgess, licensed marriage and family therapist. For more information or to stay up to date, go to launchingyourdaughter.com. You can sign up for my email list or join my Facebook group. Thank you.